in the unemployment numbers that you're fed every month, because they don't count the chronically unemployed and those that have given up looking for work. All right, let's talk a little bit about the black community. If you look at food stamp use for black Americans, it's up 58%. Labor force participation rate, 20% increase in the black community of those out of the labor force. Staggering numbers and statistics. If you look at the number of African Americans in poverty, that's up 8% under Obama, 8.2% to be exact. Number of African Americans, as I said, up by almost 20% that are out of the labor force. Home ownership rate for African Americans is down 4.6%. By the way, the lowest home ownership rate in 51 years. And this is the slowest recovery since the 1940s, for crying out loud. Median household income is also lower for African Americans under Obama, as you can see up on the screen, 1.5%. All right, so real simple. We have a doubling of the national debt. We have millions more in poverty and on food stamps. Labor force participation lowest in all of these years. You have the worst recovery since the 40s, if you want to even call it a recovery. Lowest home ownership in 51 years. Hillary's going to do the same. Why would...
You left out one thing, Sean. You've created more billionaires. So what typically happens in a left-leaning society is that the rich get very, very rich. They cipher off the top. And then the lower and middle class continues to struggle. And so when you have left-leaning policies, you have to judge them by what they actually do as opposed to their intentions. That's what Milton Friedman always said. And so the plan that the plan that candidate Trump is putting out is a brilliant plan because it inspires confidence. It's simple. It's easy to understand for the small business person, and it'll give people the opportunity to start consuming again, which will drive the consumption clock and growth in the United States.
And let's look at what Trump laid out today. We'll put it up on the screen. 15% corporate tax. I also like the idea of all these multinational corporations. There's not millions, there's not billions, but there's trillions of dollars parked overseas that they won't bring back to this country because of the confiscatory taxation that they would face if they brought that money back. You lower the rate, you incentivize them to bring it back. That means they'll invest in research and development. They'll invest in manufacturing centers. They'll invest in factories. That's jobs for Americans. All right, 15% corporate tax and the death tax. Renegotiate some bad trade deals like NAFTA. Stop TPP. Repeal and replace Obamacare. Hopefully competition will lower the amount of money families are now paying, up nearly $5,000 a year. And lift energy restrictions. How many jobs can be created in the energy field alone, high-paying jobs, and we have the benefit of national security because we're not counting on countries that hate our guts for that lifeblood of our economy.
Sean, everything you say is 100% accurate. The jobs are in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. One thing I'd like to say about Trump's speech today. The title of his speech was an America First Economic Plan, Winning the Global Competition. That's very key because what he has proposed in the four main principal areas he focused on of taxes, trade, regulatory reform, and energy is all designed to work together to improve our ability to compete in the global economy. Not to run from it, not to be isolationist, but to actually go out there and compete and win in such a way that it benefits every American, not just the richest people in America and not just the multinational corporations. Most of America has been left behind.
Well, let's take a look.
95 million people.
Trump talked about it today. Detroit, per capita income under $15,000, about half the national average. 40% of their city residents live in poverty, over 2.5 times the national average, Anthony. The unemployment rate, more than twice the national average. Half of all Detroit residents don't work. This is one of our greatest cities. You look at Detroit, Baltimore, all Democrat run, and those cities tend to still vote Democratic.
Well, now because they're on the poverty maintenance dependency, Sean, and that's why they're voting Democratic, because they know they're going to get that lucre from the government. What you need to do in cities like that is create free enterprise zones, give them a school choice, which Mr. Trump talked about today, and create new infrastructure for them, and you'll see those cities regrow. That could be a very, very vibrant city in 10 years.
Entire neighborhoods and consolidating services. You see homes on eBay for $1.
But it's not the only city. You've got Newark right across the river. It could be New York, Sean, if we're not careful here.
Well, very scary. Thank you both. Dan, Anthony, thank you. Joining us now with more. Former 2016 Republican presidential candidate, former Texas Governor Rick Perry. You know, Governor, I have often applauded the job creation in your state of Texas while you were governor. If we didn't include nationally the jobs created in Texas, there would have been net negative job growth in Obama's term in office. How do you turn this around? What did you think of Trump's speech, and how do you compare it to the last 8 years?
Well, it was spot on, and it was also simplistic, and I think that's really important. For almost 14 years, from 2001 through 2014, there was an experiment, if you will. The 12th largest economy in the world put tax policy into place, regulatory policies into place, public school policies into place, legal policies into place, and it exploded. And I'm talking about the state of Texas. It exploded job creation-wise all across the sector, whether you were African American, whether you were Hispanic, whether you were in the lower economic sector, or whether you were at the top. You saw improvement. And that occurred because of competition. We competed with these other 50 laboratories of innovation out there, the other states, and we won because we put tax policy, regulatory policy, doing exactly what Donald Trump is talking about doing, where America becomes a competitive place again. All of that money that's offshore will flood back in here when you put a tax policy into place that is not confiscatory, as you call it, and you're absolutely correct with that. So, this is a beautiful song for the people that want to create jobs in this country.
He pointed out something that I have often pointed out in New York, about 60 cents. If you add federal taxes, FICA taxes, state taxes. I live in the second highest property tax county in the country in New York. You add it all together, and sales taxes and other hidden taxes, it's over 60 cents out of every dollar I make goes to government. Donald Trump pointed out today that the average person pays 31.5% of their wages to income and payroll taxes. You add local and state taxes, that's another 10%. And the business tax rate is near 40% when you add in taxes at the state level, which makes the United States the highest business tax rate among major industrialized countries in the world. No, if I was a multinational corporation, I wouldn't bring money here, would you?
No, sir, and they're not. That's one of the reasons we see the offshoring that's occurring, is because we're holding them up, and they know that they can't have a return on their investment. Wouldn't it be great, I think Americans agree, that wouldn't it be great to have a president of the United States who actually put policies into place, devolve power out of Washington, D.C., back to these states and let these states be competitive, and at the international level send a real message of, listen, if you want to compete, America's fixing to be out there on the playing field with tax policy, regulatory policy. We're going to have public school policies that these states are going to be in charge of, that are going to really create a skilled workforce.
Yeah.
At that particular point in time, America explodes economically.
Governor, I contend the corporations don't pay taxes. Corporations pass those taxes on to we, the consumer.
You're absolutely correct.
So the highest corporate tax rates in the world means we, the consumer, are paying that much more for the goods and services that we buy, correct?
Well, we drive these companies offshore. I mean, listen, they have a bottom line, and look at what happened in California. We went and recruited businesses out of California and other states too, but California was where the fishing was the best, and you fish where the fish are. So when you overtax, overregulate, and overlitigate, guess what? They're going to look for places to go, and that's exactly what Donald Trump's done. When you add the military side of this and building this military back up and securing this country, when economics, military, securing the border, securing this country, that's what Americans are looking forward to.
Donald Trump talked about 2,000 new